In 2017, writer Jean-Yves Ferry and artist Didier Conrad created the 37th book in the Asterix series, Asterix and the Chariot Race. The villain of that book? Coronavirus. This is the Pipeline Comics Podcast. Hi, I'm Augie DeBleek Jr., and welcome back to the Pipeline Comics Podcast, looking at European comics from a North American perspective and a whole lot more. Yes, what I said in the teaser is indeed true, and it's been a bit of a headline recently in a few different places, but I think some of them turned a little more clickbaity than they deserve to be. It is an interesting story, it is a funny coincidence, but nobody predicted anything. I mean, who'd have thought that a villain with the crazy name of Coronavirus being published in 2017 would be the talk of the town in 2020? So, in the story, in Asterix and the Chariot Race, Asterix and Obelix participated in a chariot race through Italy, went from the north end of Italy all the way south. And their biggest competitor was a masked man, a helmeted man, really, a man who looks a lot like Dr. Bong, for those of you Howard the Duck fans, who raced on behalf of Julius Caesar. And in his initial introduction there, with his chariot and his 4 black horses, we find out that his name is indeed Coronavirus. Now, back in 2017, when this book was published, and it was probably written earlier in 2016, coronavirus was just a normal scientific term for, any virus with a crown-like structure. And when you're racing for the honor of Julius Caesar's crown, it's kind of a fitting name. Now, I don't remember hearing the word coronavirus back in the days of, SARS and swine flu and H1N1. Apparently, it was more common to hear that word being used in Europe, but not so much in America. We had better names for things back then. We don't like Latin words or scientific terms. We like the headline-grabbing things like swine flu. We don't hate pigs anymore. Now we hate bats. So I really didn't even get the joke behind the name coronavirus at the time, which is not the only joke in this book I didn't get, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I wasn't reading scientific papers or anything. But now, as we have the coronavirus outbreak, the COVID-19 outbreak in America and worldwide, of course, the name is in the news again, and large gatherings are being canceled left and right. Emerald City Comic-Con last week, South by Southwest, all these big cancellations. Goodness only knows what's going to happen to other comic conventions across the country and the world in the months ahead. But truly, the best thing to come of this coronavirus is the fact that people are washing their hands again. By the way, coronavirus has a sidekick whose name is Bacillus, which is a rod-shaped bacteria. So we know that Jean-Yves Ferry knew what he was doing when he wrote this book. And by the way, coronavirus is the name in the original French version of the book as well as the British version of the book. I don't know what Paper Cuts is going to do in a couple of years, but they won't be reprinting this book in their omnibus books until probably 2022. By then, this may all be a memory, and they may have no problem using that term. I hope they don't change the name, but you never know. The release of any new Asterix book is a huge deal in France. It's like a year-long anticipation for when the next book is going to come out. And the books have been coming out every other year under Ferry and Conrad. We don't have any word on whether they're doing another one together yet, but odds are they probably are working on it right now. The last 2 books, I don't think there's any word about the books being in progress until they were half done anyway, or until the books were officially on the schedule, which, if all things go according to plan, would be around October, November of 2021. Now, that book, Asterix and the Chieftain's Daughter, came out in 2019 in time to play along with Asterix's 60th anniversary. So I have a funny feeling if they needed an extra year, if they needed to go till 2022 instead of 2021 for the next book, they would, but we'll see. If a book is due out again in 2021, we won't be hearing about it probably this year at all. We'll just find out about it next January at Angoulême or something. But with this book in particular, when it came out in 2017, a month or so before the book actually came out, they revealed the cover, which to me is amazing. This is a book that has literally millions of copies printed in advance for simultaneous worldwide release. How do they keep a wrap on that kind of thing? How does, I guess, the cover not leak out? I don't know if anyone's trying to, get that leak, but Asterix is big news in Europe. You'd think, especially in France, there's news in that. There's value in that. Someone would try to leak that thing out, but it never really happens. But in 2017, they had a press conference to announce not just the cover, but the title of the new book, and to introduce, of course, the villain of the new book. And that would be coronavirus. His introduction even included a person in a coronavirus suit. So yes, we've had our first coronavirus cosplayer already in 2017. So if you see someone at a big comic book convention this summer wearing a coronavirus cosplay costume, they're not as smart as they think they are. The French beat them to it by 3 years at least. By the way, this book is also the last time that coronavirus marched through the country of Italy without the country closing its borders. Too soon? If you go to the story on PipelineComics.com about this same topic, it's PipelineComics.com/coronavirus-Asterix, or check in the show notes for it. You can see a tweet from the press conference at the time, and there you will find Jean-Yves Ferry and Didier Conrad, Asterix, Obelix, and coronavirus standing side by side. It's really quite the picture. Now, the downside of this whole thing is the book wasn't that great, to be honest. I liked it a lot when I first read it, but that was just before the Asterix agenda. And after I went back and read all the books leading up to it and saw how good they can be and how not good they could be when it was just Uderzo in his later years, a lot of stuff stood out to me as a more veteran reader that maybe didn't stand out to me as someone who hadn't read all the books yet, and in fact hadn't read many of them in many years. The book has some serious flaws, a lot of them related directly to coronavirus. Like, for example, why is he wearing this helmet? Why is his secret identity such a big thing? There's no good reason given for him to have a mask. Maybe there's something in Roman history about defenders of Caesar not showing their faces for some reason. I don't know. Sorry to sit the microphone. But that is not really present in the book. As it turns out, when he is unmasked, and you can consider this spoiler alerts from here on out, It's nobody. Well, actually, it is somebody. It's a Formula One racer, probably a legendary one, an older guy. I don't know who it is. I'm sorry. I don't do car racing stuff. I don't even do NASCAR, which I know. An American, I'm supposed to like NASCAR. I think that wave of popularity has been gone for a couple of years now, too. There really was a time a couple of years ago when NASCAR was getting really, really huge, and then it just crashed. I don't know why. And I never took part in it to begin with. So that was originally the big reveal, is that it's this caricature of this Formula One guy, who, by the way, does have a great name, which you definitely have to say out loud in order to get it. His name is Testosterone, or if you say it fast enough, testosterone. He eventually gives up being coronavirus because he finds out that Caesar has been helping him out behind the scenes, giving him fresh horses, destroying the other chariots, etc., etc. And this guy just wanted to race an honest race, like any good Formula One racer would. So he quit. And then, of course, the next day, coronavirus is back in the race. And there's a big question of, why did he come back? I thought he quit. What's going on? And it turns out in the second unveiling at the end of the book, it is Caesar behind the mask this time, which actually is kind of a good ending. Just a little bit ruined by the fact he wasn't behind the mask the entire time. I think that might have been more interesting. Tougher to work out plot-wise, but I think it would have been a bigger reveal at that point. But you already had that sort of fake reveal earlier that was a letdown, so when they do the reveal a second time, not as exciting. But then he goes on to pay lip service to how this chariot race brought him back to his youth, to the days of sport and competition, and how much he loves all that stuff, and how much, of course, he respects Asterix and all the Gauls, and so all is good, let's go have a banquet. Because that's what Caesar did a lot after René Goscinny died. I don't know why that is, but that sort of grudging admiration and respect was somehow born between Caesar, the guy who wiped out millions of Gauls, and this one village he couldn't get rid of no matter how hard he tried. And of course, there's also the matter of, and this is a typical storytelling trope, where people have to be really stupid in order for the plot to work. And in this case, other chariots are breaking down left and right, and no one suspects a thing. Everyone thinks this is just normal. It's not normal. Obviously, the race is rigged. So, here we are, in the year 2020. Coronavirus is now the ultimate villain, capable of wiping out store shelves of their antibacterial soap and Purell supplies. And Asterix's coronavirus is really just another case of a comic book, at best, It's not even predicting the future. It's correlation, not causation. It's just a name that happens to be in the news now. But this has happened before in comics, even in our lifetimes. You had that time that the Wonder Woman cover had the headline, Diana, Princess of Themyscira, struck down, right after Princess Diana was killed in the tunnel in France. There was a time Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld had that Spider-Man X-Force crossover, which featured the World Trade Center getting blown up, or at least the top floors of it getting blown up, just before the original WTC bombing in the early 90s. And then Superman had a story where Lex Luthor's two towers in Metropolis went up in flames the same week as 9/11 happened. That was really bad timing, but nothing they could do. The book was printed and shipped already. The question now is, will the next Asterix book feature a villain named COVID-19? To me, that only makes sense if it's a viral robot. And I don't want an Asterix story about a meme-spreading mechanical being of some sort. That would just be crazy. And also, again, that book won't be out until the holidays of 2021, if not 2022, so I'm not holding my breath that anyone will still be wanting to talk about coronavirus by then either. Or, God forbid, it's even worse and coronavirus is still spreading and people are dying left and right. We really don't want to go back to that well. Hopefully by then we'll just have moved on to the next world-ending plague or issue. We'll forget about all this by then. But, do keep an eye out for when that book is announced. I will be on top of it as soon as it happens. I will have a red alert published to pipelinecomics.com. Keep an eye on the front page, of course.